good to go, and we're back.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Vince, thanks, bro. Thanks for coming. So, man, tell me a little bit about your Reiki journey. Is that Reiki going
this
on?
Is Reiki. My Reiki journey.
Let's talk about your night routine there, because I'm interested to hear more about that. Because something was resonating with me. Yeah, just pop it up.
There we go. That's good. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my night routine, as I was sharing with you, do I look at the camera? Do I look at you?
No, you don't have to.
Look at the camera. Look back at me. Look at the camera. Look back. So my night routine, and it's shifting into my morning routine as well, is I give myself Reiki. So I have my level 2. I'm going to get my level 3 in another month. But it's self-healing is one thing that they teach you in level 1. And so you basically just go through all the chakras, like you know, everybody's got their own way of like bringing the energy in and, calling in your spirits, your guides, et cetera, et cetera. And then I just go one by one. And what's really interesting for me is when I sit with a specific area of my body, different thoughts pop up. So if there's a blockage and then I'm sitting there, it'll like basically tell me
what the blockage
is.
Cool.
Indirectly.
Yeah.
Like it'll be like, if I think of like the solar plexus, if it's about like self-belief, it'll show me the threads of thought that I like choose to go down during the day that lead me to not believing in myself. And and I share this experience with the intention of like sharing my experience, not to go, this is what it should be like for you or anybody listening, because everybody's got their own experience.
Yeah.
Like I'm very visual. I get a lot of visuals.
Oh yeah. Nice.
But everybody's different. But the thing I love about that thing, it's the practice is beautiful. And what I love so much about it is like, it's like, that's my time for me. And that's my time to give like physical love to myself, like energetically. It's like literally just putting all of my intention inwards. And I actually was having this conversation with a former client of mine the other day about, he was like, oh, I really changed my outlook on life. And I was like, whoa, that's so interesting. Like outlook. And I was like, what changed in your outlook? And we were talking about how it was an in-look that changed his outlook.
Right.
And that's what I believe with like Reiki. It's like I'm giving everything in here. I'm clearing everything up in here so that I can move out into the world more clear, less tense, more present. And I also will say that like Reiki from someone else is more powerful.
Right.
Is what I've found. Right. But it's just, I think it's really important for me right now to have a consistent practice of prayer, meditation, and that kind of thing. At night and in the morning.
So how long is it? Like a 10-minute thing, 20 minutes?
So minimum for me is an hour.
Oh wow! Oh, so you lie for an hour?
Yeah.
For yourself every night?
Yeah. So
every morning too.
This is the thing though. Is like the intention is every day, but it's like sometimes I have to get up at 5 and do go to a keynote at 7 or whatever. So I'm like I can't.
Yeah.
I mean I can. That's me telling myself I can't, but it just does. It's just a lot to pack in that in the morning. So I'll usually do it the night before. But like if I have the time, it's like night, morning, and lay up all the crystals. Like just go at it. Yeah.
Nice. It sounds a little bit like if I were to go inside, and just discover what's there, and I would use an IFS approach, right? So just noticing what's going on in my body. And so like one of the first questions we ask in IFS is after we get to a part that we want to get to know maybe a bit more, we just go inside the body and we ask, or first we ask, where do you feel it in or around your body? And then we just stay with it. So let's say, I was telling you about this part of my heart that closes my heart, it just tightens up. So I've been getting to know this part recently. And so I would just come to it and I would basically just ask like, hey, I see you. How you doing? And I would just notice how I feel towards this tightness, So if I'm feeling like, oh man, I'm so annoyed, then I know it's another part. So I would just ask the annoyed part if it could just give me some space. and then I bring my attention back into it, and I really focus on it, right? Like really concentrate. And the meditation practice and retreats help with this because you're developing that muscle of concentration. And so what we're doing is bringing that self to the area, right? Or to that part. And then so when I start to feel maybe more calm towards it, or just maybe more open, then I know, like, okay, there's some self within me, that my self is looking at this part now. And so now I have a few cues of what self is like inside of me. And I'm sure you do too, which I'd love to hear more about that too. But so then I can bring the attention, bring that self towards it. And naturally, when a part feels their self, it starts to transform. It starts to open up. It starts to not be so tight. It starts to be like, oh, okay, what is that?
This is what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah. I like this. Yeah. It's like, okay, you're paying attention to me.
Yeah.
So sounds similar, and I I like this in look word. The more, I'm all about the inner world, really. I think like so into this inner world, and I just feel like there's I just love the discovery of it, and I love sharing that with people too, and I love seeing other people discovering their inner worlds, because I guess sometimes it feels more real than this outer world too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. And it creates the projection into the outer world. That's what I love so much about it. It's like the more I discover in here, the more I discover out here.
Right.
And like I find in here is more vast.
Yeah.
And more limitless than out here.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like it's almost like for me, you remember those like choose your own adventure books?
Which one?
Do you remember that? Like, so like you'd like read a chapter and it'd be like, if you believe Johnny should bring his suitcase on the trip, go to page 37.
Right.
If you don't think he should, go to 35. Like, it's one of those.
I remember those, yeah.
I feel like every time I go inwards, that's what it's like.
Oh.
It's like, you want to explore that? Let's sit with it. You don't want to explore it? All right, let's go somewhere else.
Right.
And it's like this, like it's like the magic school bus. From the magic school, like it goes in and it goes around the body.
Right.
That's what I feel like if the magic school bus was my attention, that's what it would be. Going through my body going, ooh, what's in there?
Right.
Why is it so tight in my chest?
Yeah.
And you sit with it and sit with it and sit. Is it shaking? Is it tight? Is it tense? And then it's like, what thoughts are coming up that connect to that? There's that. I love that so much because it almost makes life like a game. And it's like it's not so much like a competition of like, who's the fastest person to heal,
right?
But it's the idea of, instead of focusing on fixing the 7.4 billion people around us, we focus on healing the one. That I find that so. It's not even entertaining. It's like, it's so exciting in a weird way. It's like, I can't wait to heal myself.
Yeah.
Because it gives me power to know when I go throughout my day and maybe somebody gets mad at me or somebody says something to me that triggers me, I go, oh, I can't wait to go home and sit with this, see where it comes from. Right. Rather than going, he did this to me. Right. How dare he? And then he said this to me and I had the worst day ever. Wow.
That's good. So it's like you have like an excited part that comes up. It's like, oh, cool, I get to work on this. Wow.
And trust me, it's not always like that. Yeah. It takes some like snapping into, but as soon as I get my awareness, I'm like, there's something there. I gotta work on that. And as a coach, I always think, because I think of it like this: the more I can clear my stuff, the better off I'm going to be for my clients. Totally. And so that's what excites me, and because I always talk about this like selfless thing that we have going on in our world. It's like, let's be selfless. But if we're just selfless, we are less of self. So if we're just constantly giving out without giving in first, we're literally giving ourselves away. Yeah. But if it's self-loving, if it's self-filling, self-fulfilling, like whatever the word is, to give to yourself first so that you can be selfless, that to me is that balance. It's that infinity loop of like going in, going out, going in, going out. Because like I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but my dad, who passed away in 2017 from a heart attack, he was the epitome of selfless.
Mm-hmm.
And at his funeral, there was literally 2,500 to 3,000 people that came through this funeral home. Thank you, Vince. Your dad did this for me, and he did this for me, and oh, he was so great, and he was this, and he was so selfless, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, great, but he never took the time to do that for himself, and I firmly believe that's why he's not here today. Mm-hmm. And that's not a knock on my dad. That's a lesson for me to go. It's not about everyone else. Mm-hmm. It is, but it's about me first. Yeah. So that I can give to everybody else. Because we talked about this earlier tonight, but it's like, I believe love, in order for love to go to others, it has to go through us first.
Right.
And so it's like, we're like these vessels, like these pipes. And if we don't allow it in because we're like tense and we're blocking and we're angry and all this stuff, that's selfish. Mm-hmm. Like that to me is being selfish. It's going, well, it's, you know what? I don't care about the people around me. So I don't want it to come through me to go to them. Right. Because I firmly believe once we clear that pipe, once we start to sit with that tension, put self on it, put love on it, and let it open up, we've cleared our pipe so that love can literally flow through us. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, when someone comes into the room and you're like, whoa, that person's bringing something with them. Like just bad energy or whatever it may be. And human beings can feel it, right? Like I ask kids, they can feel it. Right. But it's like the idea is to not come with anything. Like to me, that's the goal. It's like when I go coach someone, the goal is to have done all of my own healing so that none of my parts show up in a coaching conversation. Yeah. Because that would be a disservice to them.
Totally.
Because then it's about me. So that's selfish. Yeah. But the selfless thing for me to do is to clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, that's the same, it's the same thing we talk about in IFS, obviously, mm-hmm. We always find these parallels, for sure. But it is the, if I'm in a session with a client or something and something happens or they say something that's triggering for me, then I have to sit there and get to know that part of me. And obviously not in the session, mm-hmm. like ask that part to pull back. So I'll get to it afterwards. But it's also I think this is why it's really nice to work with people who are, kind of pushing, like really having the courage to go into these dark places of our unconscious that are putting the light on these little parts of us that are holding a lot of the pain. Mm-hmm. Is that no matter what, like it's going to bring up the tough things within us too, for mm-hmm. us to look at. So then we can go back and start to look at the parts of ourselves that need our attention, need that self and that love to come through and be on it. Mm-hmm. Because it's the same thing. So in the IFS, it's a constraint model. So meaning that the parts of us that are holding the burdens are actually the ones that are holding the constraints in order. So mm-hmm. So once those constraints are released, then that self can actually just come through. Mm-hmm. And then there's actually no needing to, it's not that very hard thing, right? It's like your natural state is creativity. Mm-hmm. Your natural state is compassion and curiosity and love, right?
Sorry, can we just zoom in on that? Because that's something that I think a lot of people forget. Yeah. Is the idea that our default is the thing that is like that love, that compassion, that creativity, that flow, whatever, like whatever people want to call it. But we forget that that's our default.
Yeah. Well, because the parts don't know, right? That the self is there. Yeah. Because they've been doing these jobs for so long, like your athletes, mm-hmm. they've been like needing to win the championship or needing to be the best athlete for the longest time. Mm-hmm. Right? Even your story, like you were sharing with me, it's like, I just wanted to prove that guy wrong, and that part led you for years, right? And until you brought the light on it and showed it, it's like, oh wait. And then
why am I doing
this?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's it. You're dead on. Mm-hmm. Like it, and that's it's just so interesting because when you say that, I really sit with it because it's like the love is underneath everything.
Right. Yeah.
There's something so powerful to that because it's like when people say, I'm going to find my purpose. I'm going to find who I am. Right. I'm going to find love. I'm looking for love. I'm looking for a partner. But the idea is if you're looking, you've gone too far. Everything is already in here. Yeah. And that's why self-healing is so important, because all you're doing is, I think of like one of those movies where they find a gold chest and they have to brush off all the dust and get rid of all the cobwebs. And they're like, whoa, we just found treasure. Yeah. It's like, that's what self-love is. You have to wipe away all this shit. You have to wipe away. You have to first of all, you have to look at it. Yeah. And it's like when you go into that scary room, you have to, first of all, be willing to go into that scary room to find that gold chest. Because if you're not willing to go in there, you're not going to find it. And then you're going to be looking your whole life outside of yourself for the thing that's always been inside of you. And so that's why it's so important, to hear you say it, of like, it's our default. Yeah. Which is like, there's something so peaceful to that. Yeah. Like I say it all the time, like, look at kids. Yeah. Kids, like I firmly believe this. Anything other than love is a learned behavior. I firmly believe that. Right. Because I was watching a basketball game last week at a university, and I'm watching this 7-year-old chirp all the guys on the other team, like, you suck. And the dad's like, yeah, you suck. And I'm like watching this, and I'm like just seeing this kid embody whatever the dad is doing. And it's not to judge the dad. It's not to judge the kid. It's just to go, that kid is embodying the dad because the dad is his source of love. That's right. Yeah. But what if the dad was like, let's just cheer for, I hope everybody has fun. Not one of those, but the idea of like, everything other than love, everything other than the default is a learned behavior. Our brain has convinced us that that is the route to this love that's outside of us. That's right, yeah. But the second we deprogram and like unravel, that's when we're like, oh, it's in here. Yeah. That's the powerful part.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. And so, yeah, and this is kind of so there's words that I used to use around these things, like we're programmed or conditioned, and I still maybe use them sometimes, but or patterns. These are popular words, It's like, oh, that's a pattern that I have, or we're just conditioned to do that, or, programmed. And actually, I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's much more than just a condition. It's much more than just a pattern. Because the way I view these parts of us that do these things, like, I literally view them as little children that forget that there is a self, that there is this, there is this loving energy that's showing them and that they're okay, to tell them it's okay and have a conversation. Like, I'm starting to get to know this little part of me that's scared, right? And I literally looked to my right and I just noticed this maybe a couple days ago. I'm just like, yeah, I was like talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, yeah, look, like he's just scared. Yeah, and I was like, I was like, that's so funny. Like, I always point to my right and look, and I see him. And that's what I believe, is that we all have these multiple different parts that live within us. And a lot of them are young. Most of them that ask for attention are young because they're like scared, or they're worried, or they're the ones that need attention, right? So it's funny to think it, but this is coming back to this inner world, is why I think it's so deep and real and vast, is because I literally think I'm hanging out with 1,000 different people within myself all the time, which, I think we all are if we really look in.
Now, I have a question in regards to that, because I thought about this the other day. Is there a way to organize those selves? Like, is it like, here are all of my angry selves, here are all of my happy selves? Like, is there, I know, because it's countless, right? Like, you literally can't, you'll spend your entire life looking at all of those versions of yourself. But is there a way you guys categorize it?
Well, yeah, there's a map. The map is the 3 types of parts, essentially. So there's and because we're only really, when we get to know parts, we're usually dealing with parts that are, like I said, needing attention, and the ones that need attention are usually carrying some sort of burden. So So there's 3 categories, and 2 of them fit into one category called protectors. So the protectors are made up of managers and firefighters. So the managers are the ones that kind of lead our life for the most part. They're the ones that are preemptive. They try to make sure that the ones that are hurt don't get hurt and don't get triggered. So they're kind of people pleasing, they're avoiding, they're striving or planning or, whatever, that kind of stuff, those kind of behaviors. And we can just ask inside, like if they're protecting someone or some other part, then they'll just let you know. And then the firefighters are another form of protectors, but they're reactive and they're very, they don't really care about other parts. So they're more destructive. They come in and like just extinguish the pain really fast. So it's more like drug abuse, alcohol, sex, things that are just easy to like get me away from this pain. The ultimate firefighter is suicide. It's like, this hurts so much, I should just end it, right? And so these 2 parts, this protective system, they're working so hard to protect the parts holding the burdens, which we call exiles, because once they hold the pain, what we learn to do when we're children is we don't know that we can't be there for them because we're children. And if an adult or someone can't be there for that child, like a 6-year-old, and that part holds the like pain of worthlessness or the belief of worthlessness, then that part will get exiled away. And then a protector will come and take the lead. And then that's what most people lead with, right? Are these protectors, these managers. So that's kind of the map, is the protectors and then the exiles. And then the self is kind of, when we come back to these parts, we bring the self to them and get to know what's there. But the thing is you can spend a lot of time like creating different parts maps, getting to know certain parts of you, like your part in business, your parts in relationship, your parts around your family. And you can start to draw out like different parts maps, and you'll start to see there's a lot of them. You'll get to know them over time. You'll be like, oh, there's my angry part, or like, oh, there's my part that wants to avoid things, and you can start developing a relationship with them. But then things change too as you change, right? So, going from not being a relationship to an intimate relationship, a whole set of parts are going to come up, and it's going to be maybe a little bit weird at first, So yeah, there's ways, but it's definitely hard to pinpoint them all, I would say, all the time.
Yeah.
But it's also the practice of this is just like leading with a natural curiosity of what's here right now. It's kind of like what I think you were just saying this, right? It's like the magic school bus. It's like, well, I don't know, right?
What's going on in there?
Yeah. Or like when you go to a client, you're just like, okay, you're leaving all your parts behind. You're bringing the self, and the self is naturally curious. It's one of the C's, the 8 C's of self. It's like, okay, what's here? Let's see. So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. Do you work with clients like that in some way? And I mean, maybe not specifically the map, but just in.
Yeah, and that's why I asked, because for me, it's about the reflection, and so it's about whatever's happening on the outside of us just reflects a piece of ourself or a part of ourself that we love or we have yet to love.
Yeah. Right.
And so the way I break it down is basically like, say, with athletes, this happens a lot. It's like, say there's an athlete who's doing better than me. Okay. I get them to extract the characteristics of that person. What's that person embodying right now? That's really triggering you. Could be greatness. It could be, they're working hard, they're consistent, whatever. And then I go, okay, I put it into 3 categories. Is this a past version of yourself? Is this the present version of yourself? Or is this the future version of yourself that you don't know yet? So maybe you just don't understand. And so it could be a part of yourself that you just haven't seen. So, because I think of like myself when I first started coaching, I would judge, like, I'd see like Tony Robbins, like on my feed, and I was like, what an idiot. Like, this guy's so aggressive and whatever. But later on, I realized I was just judging myself because he was doing great things, making a big impact, that kind of thing. And so it was a future version of myself that I haven't seen yet. And so the way I categorize it is like, if it's past, it very most commonly needs forgiveness. If it's future, it most commonly needs trust, like self-trust. And then if it's present, it needs love. And so it's a matter of kind of going through a day and going, what did all of my reflections say about me? And that's why I'm talking about reflecting back to ourselves. But the idea is like, it's kind of like ringing out. What's most important is ringing out the characteristics of those people. So it can show us the characteristics of the part of ourself that we love or have yet to love.
Right.
And that's why I'm very curious in terms of categorization, because it's like what I start to find in my work is that it's all connected, right? Like there's a theme to the past versions of myself, to the present, to the future. And that's why, because the idea is like basically the overlap. I can't use both my hands, but the overlap of the future and the past versions of myself is my present self. It's what I believe. And so the idea is like the more forgiveness we give the old little Vinces and the more trust we give the future Vinces is the more love I have in the present moment. And there's what I love so much about that practice is that the idea of going back to, I'm not trying to figure out 7.4 billion people. I'm trying to figure out one.
Right.
And you make me mad. You don't make me mad. I love you. But you make me mad. You didn't make me mad. I chose to let you make me mad. And there's a part of me that is mad when you say things like that. And it's the idea of going, okay, what is that? Right. Who is that? What memory did that stem from? What part of myself am I not trusting to sit in that discomfort? I'm thinking of, back to our conversation earlier about proving someone wrong. If I have to prove someone outside of me wrong, that means I'm not loving the part of myself that reflects that belief. Because if I have to prove to someone outside of myself, that means I don't fully believe it internally. Yeah. And so it only triggers me because they don't believe it. Because if I truly believed it and he laughed in my face. So the story is I was coaching and my head coach brought me in, and I was coaching professional football. And he brought me in and he said, Vince, like, what do you want to do with this experience? And I said, I want to be a Division I college football coach. And he's like, oh, come on. I've been trying for 10 years. If I can't make it, you can't make it. So I put on this face and I'm kind of like, this guy, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. Right. And I start telling everybody, right, this guy didn't think I could do it. So much wasted energy, right? Just this guy didn't think I could do it. How dare he? And then I say that so I get the validation of everybody else, and they all join in like, yeah, Vince, we're on your team. Okay. So I spend about 3 years trying to prove this guy wrong. And I technically did. Like, I got the job that I took that he didn't believe I could get. But then I see him 3 years later, and we're at a training camp in with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we're on the other opposite ends of the field, and we're both walking towards the middle, and it's kind of like a wild west, like, like one of these, And he goes, "Hey Vince, how are you doing?" I'm like, he better ask me what I'm up to, so I could just tell him, right? So then he's like, what are you up to? And I was like, yeah, I'm a, Division I college football coach with Ohio University. And he goes, oh, cool. And then just walked away. And I'll never forget the absence of external validation in that moment, and realizing how little of importance it actually was. And for 3 years, I put so much value on that. I was like, how dare this guy challenge who I am? Right. How dare you challenge how good I am at this? But I was seeking external validation. And that's when I realized, I'm like, I literally lived 3 years of my life for him. Right. And that's why when I work with athletes now, it's about self-definition. Right. And it's detachment through definition. To detach from needing external validation from others, I first need to define the love I already have inside myself. Swiping away all those cobwebs, going through those uncomfortable moments, and seeing what's underneath it all. Because the second you define your love is the second you define your life. Because then when a new pathway comes up in life, you're not choosing the path that takes you to proving others wrong, trying to get love and validation from others. You choose the one that you're meant to be on, because it fills you up first.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can attract the love and validation from others.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I believe it's so important to define your own love, because I believe we live for those who love us the most.
Mm.
And for some people, they carry it to their grave. They live their entire life for their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever my parents say, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right.
All I'm saying is your soul, your spirit, your essence of your being has a truth that wants to come out, wants to be actioned, wants to be voiced.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the more we listen to others the more we pay attention to others' truths before our own, the more we're suppressing who we are.
Right.
And so I believe it's very important to start by going, well, who is self? Who am I? Underneath trying to prove everybody wrong, underneath the label of being a manager, the label of being a CEO, a pro athlete, a student, a musician. Who am I without all of those things?
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy part is, underneath all those cobwebs and all that dust is just pure love.
Yeah. Which for many people is a scary thing to start to open up to, right? I mean, even I know for myself, it's like the deeper I go into that, the deeper I go into this kind of softening of this self and this understanding of like, okay, there is just love. This is like an essence that's really flowing through me.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to invite those cobwebs, the ones that are the most tangled.
Yeah.
And that can be like, whoa, at first, right? Like, where did that come from? Or, I mean, a lot of the time, some things come up that you forgot completely, because we have managers or protectors that are there to forget, especially when things are really young. You know, they're easy to do that, right? So yeah, it's a courageous path is the one thing for sure, right? And I think I kind of, as we do this and we invite the people in our life as well who get closer to us, who actually can trigger us more, right? So like in partnerships and stuff, the name for it is there are Tor mentors, like Tor-mentors.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like our greatest mentors, really, right? But they're there to torment us, to trigger us, to
show us where we need to go.
And it seems to be, you know, at least that we are attracted to the people who are giving us a sense of love or a sense of acceptance that we haven't given ourselves yet, or we haven't given those little parts of us, because maybe we're just unaware of them, and so when we feel this love from someone, we're like, oh, this feels so good, and then the moment it's not there, it's like,
this feels so bad.
Yeah. I hate her. Yeah. You know, like, why am I doing this? Like, what is happening, right? Yeah. So it's nice. It's a journey.
You know what comes up when you say that?
Yeah.
The grief of my losing my father.
Yeah.
Because what I learned that my grief was the unplugging of all of the stuff I relied on him for.
Right.
And
yeah, that's big.
It was the attachment. It was my father, like 100% unconditionally loved me, accepted me for who I was. If I said something that I was afraid to tell anyone else, I said it to him. I said, all right, let's talk about it. And what I learned when he was gone, so he unplugged, what was hurting me the most was that I wasn't giving that to myself.
Yeah, right. Nice. Wow.
And that is what, excuse me, that's what helped me in my grieving process, because I realized that, of course I miss him.
Yeah.
But there's so many aspects of it, of what did I rely on him for that's really hurting me right now. And it was everything that I was not giving to myself. And still to this day, I'm still unwinding and unraveling what those things were. And because I remember as a kid, like he was my safe place and he was my unconditional support and like everything I ever like, Dad, this is what I'm going through and whatever. And it was safe. Mm-hmm. And what I learned, you know, moving forward after he passed is I was like, I don't have, like I've conditioned my little Vinces to go, we're not safe anymore.
Right.
And that's when it was like mayhem. Like I went into a depression and like it just, and that's why I believe this self-work is so important to do it. Not when you're in transition, mm-hmm. not when, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, shit hit the fan. It's like now, mm-hmm. like do the work now so that when that thing happens, yeah, it's going to hurt. It's going to sting. It's going to be painful. You may be depressed. You may be anxious. Absolutely. But you'll have more tools to cope and to deal mm-hmm. with those moments. Because, you know, if I think of when I talk about a plug, right? It's like I'm plugged into, if I'm attached to you, I'm plugged into you. Mm-hmm. So these 3 fingers, they rely on 3 things that you give me. So it's like, it could be acceptance. You believe in me and you pump me up, like external validation, whatever. If I rely on you for them, I'm not giving them to myself. But I first need to acknowledge that I'm plugged into you. Mm-hmm. And then I pull it out and go, whoa, how do I do this now? How do I plug it back into myself so that I give myself those 3 things? I believe that's the difference between emptiness, like I need that from you, and fulfillment. I give it to myself first. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if I think of like a kiddie pool, right? It's like you've got, or any pool, whatever, but I just think of a kiddie pool because you get the hose and you fill it up. And the idea is like you fill it up and then it pours out over into like the grass. It pours over, you know, like it overflows into others. Mm-hmm. But it's you putting the hose in and going, I'm going to fill up my love today. Mm-hmm. And then it just pours out into everything else around you and everyone else around you. You know, but if I'm an empty pool waiting for like, hey, can you give me a cup right now? I just need to, you know, it takes forever. Mm-hmm. We're chasing it. But if we're just constantly going like this, it's constantly overflowing. And I firmly believe that. And that's why, like, you know, if I think when we were talking about earlier of there's 7.4 billion people, but I'm going to focus on one, it's the same thing of going, I do 6 different things in my life, work, family, school, my partner, whatever. I have all these different things. Instead of focusing on all those different things separately, focus on the one that connects to all of them. Mm-hmm. And that's you. Right. Right. And so the idea is if you fill up the pool in the middle, it's going to overflow into all of those buckets. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I talk to athletes about this all the time where it's like we spend so much time trying to master the craft of being an athlete, but it's just one little bucket. So we're constantly trying to put our water in this thing, and we're forgetting about everything else rather than putting all the water in ourselves so that it pours out into all of these separate things. Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's a thought I've had recently is one of the reasons why I think IFS is so revolutionary too is that it brings in the systems thinking. Mm-hmm. And so I think about, you know, what systems are we part of? You know, first we're part of our own system, our inner system, right? So we have the self that is us, and then we have these parts that are all interconnected. And the more we bring ourself to these parts, the more we can live more balanced and more in harmony within ourselves, but then externally. Mm. So this is like a system that none of us can actually opt out of because we're all human and we all have parts and we all have the self, and we can fight it or we can resist it and we can be angry and blended by one part our whole life or whatever, or we can learn to work with it. But we can only really work with it well when we can bring the self to it, right? Mm-hmm. So then I look at, okay, that's the system that is great. I think everyone, it's worthwhile to look at and work on for everyone. But then it's like, okay, what other systems are we part of? You know, you just mentioned some. It's like we're part of the sports team system or the family system or just the intimate relationship system or, you know, the business system, you know, and this is where I think this modality can be such a game changer for things like sports teams and businesses, because typically the captain on the sports team is not the most self-led person. Mm-hmm. They're the star, right? And then the other parts of the team are like looking up to them and
trying to be as good as them or whatever, right? Maybe not, they're not being felt the same way or connected to, right, the same way. So then the team starts to operate out of harmony, right? And and this is why I believe that book I was telling you about, Captain Class, I think a lot of those captains are self-led people, you know, and they're, you know, not the typical captain. They're not the highest scorer on the team, but they're the ones that are communicating the most with every player on the team. They're the ones that are, you know, going home after practice and staying at home and not caring too much about celebrity status, and because all that stuff are the parts, right? Are like needing the validation, needing to be seen, needing to be better, but they are caring only if the system succeeds, not themselves.
Yes.
Right. And so that's a really telltale sign of, is the person or is the system operating from a place of self? Is it if they are looking out for the system rather than the part itself, or the you know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From love or for love.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You always have these like great one-liners.
but it's the
true.
same thing.
It is,
but it's
yeah.
the exact same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
because that system, it's like, if you think of the epicenter of that system, it comes from love.
Yeah.
It's like that guy goes, I don't need, that guy or girl goes, I don't need to prove to everyone else that I'm good enough to get love from them, because I already have it. And because I already have it, I'm giving it to my team. I'm 100%.
Right.
Because, you know, think of how much easier that is. Like I'm talking easier. Like how much smoother it is to operate through life going, I don't need to prove to all these people. I have it already, and I'm going to give it to them.
Right.
Like think about that. Like, would you rather have somebody come knock at your door every day and go, I need $20? Or just go like, that person comes up and gives you $20, you know? And not, I mean, it may be a terrible analogy, but the idea of like, everyone has that thing to give.
Right.
But we convince ourselves like, no, I need it from Instagram. No, I need it from them. I need it from this person, you know? And I just, the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because for my life, I always had love around me, but I never had love inside of me. I didn't know that existed. So I always chased the love outside of me. And I actually was brought like this. I was reminded of this a couple of days ago. In grade 10, I won Athlete of the Year, which was like, I was like, oh, Athlete of the Year. You know, walk around the school like, do they know I got Athlete of the Year? Like, it was one of those things, you know? And the next year, I didn't get it. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I shut down, started crying, and my dad was a coach, so he was at the thing. I asked for his keys, went into the car, and just started crying. And I didn't realize, because then you're like, oh, I wanted this so bad. This, right? I want this award so bad. I want it to be good, like prove that I'm good enough, all this stuff. All I wanted was love. That's all I wanted. And the idea there was I was upset because I wasn't loving myself first. And I was so desperate for it that I needed a piece of plastic to tell me that I was worthy of love.
Right.
And that's why it's so important, because in that whole summer, I remember training, like injuring myself in the gym, trying to prove to everyone that I'm strong enough, good enough, whatever. Like, for what? For a piece of plastic. This is the thing though, is I didn't enjoy 1 minute of that. There was no joy in that, because all it was fear. All it was, God, I really hope my coach makes sure he knows how hard I worked this summer. Rather than, I can't wait to play basketball.
Yeah.
I can't wait to play football. It wasn't like that. I was like, I literally was a ball of like tension. And I believe there's so many humans operating like that right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm not that person. We all have these like parts of us that create that tension or whatever. But now I have the tools to deal with it. But there's so many people who literally live their entire life going, yeah, I gotta be the best at the work. I gotta do this, and it's like the grind. You know, everything's pushing, but not realizing that there is a default mode of going with ease, going with love, going with compassion, which and this is the part that gets me, is that's what's better for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Energetically, when you have a boss that comes into work and they're coming from love, you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, whoa, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the second it's about the outcome and it's about the external validation, you also feel that, because you feel not worthy. You feel not good enough. That's why it's so important for love to come from self.
Yeah. And
I'm getting fired up, Tim.
yes, no, same. And this is what makes it tough sometimes to see the what's going on in the world, because a lot of people are not led from that place. It's like it's a really seductive force to not be, right, to be coming from a place of striving or a place of whatever, even anger. It's like can be seductive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's kind of like, oh man, it's a little unsettling to see even sometimes. But I think there's hope, you know.
We have to believe it.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah. I think it's just a beautiful way to see that kind of unfolding of someone coming from that place and seeing like an organization or a team that's like supported from that kind of support, you know, that kind of a leader, that kind of, just like the energy behind it is much different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was going to say something else and I forget now, but there was yeah, the thing was so when you're seeing the people who are coming so led, like they don't even know this is in them, you know. I mean, they probably even cringe at the word.
Yep.
You know, it's like, fuck, like shut up, you know. It's like, get out of here. I got a job to do, you know.
Yep.
So that's a tough task, right? To work with those kind of people. Like, how do you approach them? I can tell you what we would do for MyFest, but I'm curious how you would even look at it.
So
It's probably most of them are like that to start, right?
for sure. And the approach I take is from love. Because if I force them the same way they're forcing themselves,
right,
it's just a spiral.
right,
But it's that, you know, it's like when you get them to meet that part of themselves, and it's really uncomfortable, right? They sit there and like, what is this? And I'm like, okay, because I have this way of breaking it down where it's kind of like, okay, you go back to that moment. It's like, what did you want in that moment? You know, what did you get or not get? And then the idea is going, okay, now, you know, visualization of you, present you, sitting down with that version of you and giving yourself in that moment everything that you wanted. So what I learn is, it's really interesting when they break it down. It's like, oh, I just wanted love. I just wanted acceptance. It's really, really hard for people to look at themselves and go, I love you, or I accept you. And it's from that conditioning. It's from that part of ourselves that's like, no, you can't do it. Yeah, we got work to do. You got to get this job done, you know? But it's sitting in that space with them as if you're in the room with them, just kind of like, hey, like, this is your choice. You can say whatever you want, but just know, like, this is you, you know? And what I find beautiful is men specifically right away will have a really, really hard time. And then I'll just kind of like, just keep asking questions. It's like, you know, is there anything else you want to say to them? Is there, like, you know? And the second that it connects and they go, and I'm like, because I always tell them, so this is what's really interesting. It's coming up right now. A lot of men start speaking to it. They start speaking to the outcome in that moment. It's not about you. Don't worry. It will get better. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll go, but what would you like to say to them from heart to heart?
Yeah.
And the second that magic school bus drops into the heart, they go, I love you. Or like, you know, you're good enough the way you are. But it's so interesting how we're automated to speak about the moment around them. And what's so great about that is 9 times out of 10, that's when men start to understand what it means to connect their mind to their emotions and to their heart. because I think of it like threads, right? Like it's like whatever we it's like stringing a guitar or something, right? If we live most of our lives from our head, we've strung our guitar up here. And so we play our instrument from up here, and we're completely disconnected from in here. So the music is only coming from our head. But once we start to go, oh, geez, why did I plug that up there? And then we go, okay, what did I want in that moment? Love. We start to literally rethread all of these things back to our hearts. Okay? When that moment happens for, obviously I work with women as well, but with men, it's like once they get that taste of one, they're like, whoa, so I can do this again? And then they just keep going and they keep going. And then the idea is to fully connect the head to the heart. Because if we used our head, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but it's just coming up.
It's great.
If we've used our head to block off our heart, that means the way back to the heart is through the head.
Right.
So it's about creating access points from the brain down to the heart. So it's connected so that these thoughts reflect our true intuition.
Right.
They reflect operating from the heart rather than going, what should I do right now? What does everyone want me to do right now? Instead going, what do I want? What do I want to say? Who do I want to be with? That's when it's like, that's why those threads are so important to be connected to here. Because that's when you start operating from the love you've defined for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, it's taken me in a great direction. I like where this is going because I want to get to something, but there's this thing of, okay, what does that guy need from you when you tell and you said they say something like, oh, it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that it's actually what we see a lot in people who are just starting out IFS or something. It's we'll see a part of them. It's like, yeah, that part's just part's angry.
They haven't learned their lesson yet.
Or like we'll be like, okay, how do you feel towards that angry part? It's like, oh, like it's not about it. It shouldn't be angry. It's like, okay, so that's another part, right? So like you said, this is coming more from the head. It's not coming from the heart. So then we ask that part, all right, so the part that thinks that it shouldn't be angry, do you think that part can just step back for a moment? Just ask it to, take a step behind you. And it's like, oh, okay, it can do that. Okay, it's like, all right, now how do you feel towards that angry part? And it's like, oh man, I get it. I'm kind of curious. Like, why is it angry? Right? And then it gets to that level of like, I actually just love this angry part, and it's likely just protecting another part of me, But I'm very interested to dive into this more because of the, like, what is around being a man in Western culture, or just maybe in general. But we have cultural kind of norms around a man, and we're in a very rugged, individualistic culture. So it is like, be the best, win, suck it up, don't be sad, like don't cry. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about mostly because you're a crier, I'm a crier. And it's like a very sensitive, and we were talking about the sensitivity that we've been feeling. So let's talk about that more, but also just that it's a I don't know, my experience with this sensitivity as it's like slowly unfolding within me is that I'm very open to it, and I see it as actually a huge strength within me, but also how it's almost, it's not like okay to be sensitive, right? And so what's your experience with the sensitivity that you were speaking about earlier, or even just what's coming to you as I speak about this?
Yeah. So sensitivity for me it's like a radar for the thing that, how do I explain this? A radar for the thing that we're meant to be here for. And I think of like love, okay, or truth. And when we're sensitive, we feel truth, we feel love, we feel intention, we feel all those things. But we're taught at a young age to protect all that, right? And this is the thing, is if we build up walls around our love, not only can no love go out, but love can't come in. And I believe the sensitivity is us having these, like, being able to see through other people's walls and feel. And that word is so fucking important in this life, is to feel. Because when we're disconnected, like earlier when I was talking about the threads, when we're up here, we're not feeling, we're thinking through life. But feeling, the thing with feeling is it guides us where we're supposed to go. It guides us as to where our healing is. It guides us as to where the truth is. It guides us as to where our purpose is. But when we're operating from here, we're pulled to, like, what should I do? What am I supposed to do? All those different things. Sensitivity is feeling. It is I just think of, like, remove all the walls. It's like our radar is like, oh, Tim's here, you know, rather than going, Tim is here. Tim is a company owner. Therefore I should be talking to him. Hi, Tim. I love you. You know, like but that's the way our world is.
Yeah.
Rather than going, oh, I love this guy, I'm going to tell him that I love him. Or going, like, something about him, I'm not so sure. That's sensitivity. And as I shared with you, like, as a kid, for me, I was so sensitive. I'd cry at random things, you know, on the outside, like, people are like, this guy's crazy or whatever. But I know that there was something I was feeling. Yeah. I know it. So the idea of, you know, especially, you know, in terms of what it means to be a man, I believe to be a real man, just like a real human is to be in touch with your senses and to be in touch with your feelings. Because, you know, this is why I love working with women so much, because they show me what that embodiment looks like. And then I always go, wait, this is possible for a man. Like, I've seen it before. Like, you know, when you meet a guy and you're talking about, like, love, or you're talking about gratitude, and then tears come out, you can't help but cry. Because that's the truth, right? But if we're all operating from the head, that stuff can't happen. We don't feel. So I believe that to be a man is to feel. It's to be connected to your feelings. It's to be connected to your emotions. It's to understand where they came from. It's to understand that you're able to heal them. I had a client reach out to me the other day and say, you know, after your program, like, you know, his whole thing was, like, it was his first time, like, looking at himself, like, truly looking at himself. He said, after I became in touch with my emotions, this is what he said. He was single. He all of a sudden attracted this woman in his life that not only was in touch with her emotions, but honored his emotions. So when he cried, she was like, let's talk about this. I'm here for you. Rather than, what the hell's going on? You're supposed to be a guy. Like, you're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be that. And he said word for word, he was like, I attracted that within a partner because I did it for myself first. And that's it made me emotional, because I'm like, what if all men did the work on themselves, reconnected all of those strings back to their heart?
Right.
And this is why IFS is so important. It's like, imagine if men spent the same amount of time that they try fixing all the things around us, to go and start loving all the parts of ourselves. Watch the world change.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, it's not even like, you know, I love all these parts of myself, and then I'm like, hey, everybody, just let you know, I'm loving all the parts of myself. That's not how love works. Love is embodiment. It's energy. It's a feeling. It's a frequency. It's all those things, right? So the second that happens, all of a sudden that part of their life is changing. They don't even know it. And then they start to attract different things.
Totally.
And I say they, but it's us. It's us as a collective, as men. Like, but the idea of, like, you know, I'm thinking of someone who's not doing the work.
Right.
It's like, that is what's possible, is instead of, you know, getting in fights with people, instead of being really angry and expressing all of your anger and your rage at a sports game, it's like, transmute all of that into love inwards and watch what happens in your life. You know, and I think so much of so this is a big one for me because I'm really passionate about this because of what just happened to me. I had, like I told you, the world's largest splenic cyst.
Yeah.
Okay. And so for me, it was every injury in my life has been on my left side, my feminine side. And I believe that in life, like, so we all have masculine, feminine sides. And I think of it like this. If I favor one side of me, okay, because whatever's happening internally is happening externally. If I favor one side of me internally, that means I'm always picking a side in my external world. I think of cheering for teams. I think of when, fights. I think of all those things. We pick a side. It's like, nope, like I'm on this team and I need you to know that I'm on this team because I'm better than you. So it's our masculine side fighting against our feminine side. But the second I found oneness within myself, where I realized these are both sides of me and it's all the same, it's all on the same coin, I stopped picking sides. No joke. I swear to God, like I literally used to go to games and be like, I'm a Hamilton fan. Right. Go Hamilton. And then when this happened, I'll never forget it. When this happened, I was like, I'm going to cheer for them, but I really don't care who wins because we're all part of the same thing. But it's really interesting because if there's a competition going on in here, there's a competition going on out here. Totally. And so it's the idea of that's why it's so important, I believe, for men to embrace both sides of themselves because there's so much beauty in that. It's like to be really assertive, but with love. Yeah. Like, come on, that's amazing. Yeah. That's why I love, like, specifically when I work with women and they find their voice and they have that loving, compassionate, sensitive side. And then now they're like speaking up and they're expressing truth. It's like, you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's attractive.
Not only is it attractive, it's like think powerful. It's powerful. Yeah, it's like, think of how the world changes with that. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And it's the same with men. It's like, think about them, like men getting in touch with their emotions, how powerful that is because look at our culture. There's a lot of men in charge, right? And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's like, that's just the way it is right now. But imagine if those men in charge had more loving characteristics. Imagine if they were more in tune with their emotions. Imagine if they trusted their intuition more. Imagine if they were more, you know what I mean? Like, what could happen for the world? Totally. Yeah. Like that's when the world changes. And that's why I firmly, going back to everything we're saying, it's like the world changes in here first.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Like we can't go and it's got to be.
Yeah, and it's one of the tougher things to convince someone about or convince a guy about. Even myself sometimes, even though I know, like there's no, like it's so obvious. Like, dude, go sit and meditate. And just go be inside you and like really just look and spend a lot of time doing it. And I do it. Spend a lot of time every day, but could spend more, and not just that I could spend more, but that I do have parts that believe that they need to do certain things, need to go strive for certain things or grab certain things still. And I have to keep reminding them, and it's, not to say that that's wrong to like go grab anything, but it's like, what is the energy that's behind it? Yes. Is it the grasping energy or is it kind of like coming from that self or the love, right? But I think it is one of the toughest things to convince people that this is what you like, this will help you. This will help the world actually. So, and I think, there are moments where people have that kind of like light switch. Like, I don't know if it was for you when you lost your dad or if it was even a lot earlier than that, but clearly when you lost your dad, there was an intense amount of realization. Like, whoa, these little guys need me, So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that to spend that time. Right.
And something that you said that I would like to speak to is like, if I think of like men, we're very logical, right? Yeah. So I called it the LOL, the logic of love. So I always, if they're sitting in that place of, it's not so much convincing them because it's like that comes from a place of like, exactly. I need them to be right. But if they're open to the conversation, what I always do is it's like, okay, what do you want in your life?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, this is what I want. Okay, I want to be successful at work. Great. What comes with being successful at work? This, and this. It's like validation, acknowledgement, achievement, whatever, all these things. How do you feel when all that happens? I feel validated. I feel good enough. I feel all that. Great. Do you feel that way right now? No. Okay. That's conditional love.
Right.
So it's almost like we have to, not have to, I was just going to speak for myself. I have to take them on a path of what they know, to take them to what they don't know, to expand that awareness, to then get them to come back and go, shoot, next time I go down that path, am I fulfilling myself with that feeling and that love first before I go down? Because that's our greatest opportunity, is to go, what do I want from others? And am I giving that to myself first?
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people the quickest way to do this, write in 25, in 250 words, how you know someone else loves you. So it's like, they accept me for who I am. They sit with me when I'm down. They, they hug me when they greet me, et cetera, et cetera. And then rewrite the exact same paragraph, replacing all of the theys with I's and me's. So I accept myself for who I am. I create space to understand myself. I sit through my own discomfort. And that's our greatest opportunity for fulfillment. Because if we can't give to ourselves what we want from others, we will constantly be seeking the love from others.
That's right. Yeah.
Because that's the thing about self, is like, it's always on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
whether it's out here or it's in here, it's always on.
Yeah.
So it's about, okay, can I regenerate and cultivate this love inside myself first before I go out there?
Mm-hmm. It also is, it doesn't get damaged, and it also doesn't need to be developed.
Yes.
It's just
It's
needs to be uncovered, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think one of the things, like coming to maybe the concept of attachment, on like maybe the most harmless level of attachment you could speak of is like you receiving love from your dad, and it's like, who would ever look at that and think of it as a situation where it's like, you should, like, not that you shouldn't receive it, but like, you're not giving love, it's like, watch out, it's like, dude, this is just a son getting,
Yeah.
it's like, what? But it kind of, it's a good point, because, it's not like relying, it's still, there's something external that we don't really know, but like it illuminates when it's gone.
Yes.
Right. So for me, like, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it's this practice of continually going inside and asking yourself, like, where am I not like loving myself, or where are these, what parts in me need my attention, constantly. And this is why I'm obviously like a huge believer in the meditation retreats and just the stillness and all that. Right. So, because we don't know, like,
no, we have no idea.
So it's that we don't know what we don't know. Right. Yeah.
Dude, I noticed it the other day in myself, where I was like, I was sharing stories. What was it? I was sharing stories for the reaction of others. And one of my biggest like self-affirmations right now is I am receptive. So I attract the love rather than go out and get it. And I realized, I'm like, if I'm receptive right now, am I telling this story? No. So I was like, okay.
Right.
Because that's what it was for. It was like, guys, you won't believe what happened to me. Yo, you got to hear this. And I'm like, literally. Right. And I want everyone to go, oh, really? Oh my God, that happened? And you see their reactions. I'm like, that's just validation. Right. Do I need that? No. Right. And what the deeper part of it for me is, if I go down into being receptive, what space am I creating for others to learn those lessons about themselves rather than hogging all that energy?
Right. But also I would push back a little bit on, or just like dissect this a little. So so it sounds like there's a part of you that wants validation from others.
Yep.
But then another part of you that's saying like, hey, like, let's just receive, but what if you went to the part that's looking for validation of others and just like getting curious about why it's looking for that? I mean, maybe you did this, but just wondering, because sometimes we can do that, is we can, like, for example, like I will have like let's say I have a part that's angry and wants to get angry, but I don't let it. And I have this other part that's like, no, don't do that. It's not a good idea. Like, you'll look bad. It's not loving, and it's a kind of this it's like good advice, but it's still pushing it away.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually it's like, actually I'm suppressing this other part of me, where like if this part that says don't do that pulls back, and then the angry part gets heard, then it shows you what it's actually trying to protect as well.
Yes.
So the layers are, it's so layered
Totally.
sometimes, right? Yeah.
Totally.
But like the way we know, I guess, is just we know that we're bringing the attention or the self to it, right?
Yep.
So this is where I get personally, I can get maybe layered sometimes too. It's like, really, this is why the daily practice of checking in is like, oh, okay, was that from a part, or was that really what I'm, that self or whatever. So yeah,
dude, I love that.
Yeah.
Because I do need to sit with that part of me.
Right.
Because I have before,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's like, oh yeah, I loved him, so it's all good, moving on.
Right.
Forgetting that it's a constant practice.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I love myself, moving on. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't graduate from self-love class, It's
Right.
like, it's every day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
That's why, I love Ram Dass when he said, if you believe you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
because it's like we sit there like, I got this. I've got this life thing figured out. And then you go home and you're like,
yeah, God damn it.
shoot,
Yeah.
So good.
Nice. All right, bro. I mean, that's pretty good. Yeah.
How long have we been here?
It's over an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that
That's
jerk
good.
chicken, man. It fuels us.
Yeah. What else? What else is up? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I got I created a 33-33 challenge.
Yeah.
So it's 33 days of 33 different modules, and it's self-discovery and self-love. So the first 16 days is all about understanding who you are, and then the next 17 days is all about loving that part of you. Because I find so often if we don't know who we are, we're loving the parts of us that have been defined by others.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, I love that I'm an athlete. It's like, okay, well, what happens when you're not an athlete?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you loving? So it's the idea of self-discovery, self-love. It's very interactive. You're included in a group Slack channel. And then I have my online community, the Legacy Lab. So it's just bonus resources, different guest teachers. So a lot of cool things like that. And then, follow me on Instagram at the Legacy Coaching.
Nice.
And
it's
then
legacycoaching.com.
at the legacycoaching.com.
Legacycoaching.com.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, bro.
Dude,
thanks,
thank
man.
you.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to thank you first, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Because this is the thing. I just want you to know, I love our conversations because you take me to a deeper part of my brain that I don't always tap into.
Right.
And you push the walls of my imagination. And I love, because we're both in the same place, right? That's why I love our chat. So
thank you too, man. The one thing I've been realizing is that the way that I'm allowed to go to these places too is when all of my parts feel received by someone.
Dude, yeah.
And it feels very safe, you know, and which, I need to go to those parts and let them know that they're always safe. But it is in circumstances like this right now and with one other person that I can just allow for the depth to continue, right? So
completely agree. I'm right there with you.
All right, bro. Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Dude, man, we're out.